Two nights after their worst loss of the season, the Phoenix Suns respond big time with a win on the road in Minnesota, laying out the blueprint for the type of team win they can get, even without multiple starters out of the lineup. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, we'll break down this win and lay out that blueprint. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons and a writer at Suns.com and Dime Magazine. Thank you all for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this winning Wednesday, early Thursday morning, wherever you are, whenever you are. A big thank you for joining us. We are everywhere. We are free everywhere. The best way to support the show is to listen and subscribe. So whether you're on Apple or Spotify or YouTube, hit that follow or subscribe button. Make sure you do not miss a show in your feed every single day. If you're on YouTube, hit that bell down below. Make sure you get a notification when we have a new show up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on this win. 129-117 is the final score. The Suns answering the call. I probably overreacted to Monday's loss, but it was ugly. 88 points. They scored 41 more than that tonight with the 129. So it's safe to say they were just as confused, just as frustrated about Monday's performance as all of us were, as you were, as I was. So let's break it down. It was a fun game. It was one of those random weekday regular season games that are just fun to watch. Like, just a reminder that this team is a blast. This team is exciting. I want to remind everybody also to follow on Twitter, where you can give your 7-word or less game takes every single regular season game of the year. I have Paul A with Booker, Mikal, Cam. That's his 7 words or less game take. I have Jake saying Booker/Bridges, go Jordan/Pippen on the Wolves. He's making a little bit of an exaggerated use of that 7 words with the slashes, but I'll allow it today. So that's what we do on game days over on Twitter, and keep up with the show that way as well. What I want to get to should not surprise you. It's the team element of this, and I'll get into some folks more specifically as the show continues, but I don't even necessarily want to highlight any one player tonight, if that makes sense, because Mikal Bridges was 3 points off of his career high. You had Cam Payne 1 point off of his career high. Book with the double-double, 32 points, 10 assists, just 1 turnover, 12 of 23 from the field. He was lighting up the Wolves from deep with pull-up threes, catch-and-shoot threes. Ridiculous skill level on display today from him. And then guys off the bench too. Landry Shamet, who I'll hit on a little more later, stepped up. I thought Dario's minutes were pretty solid, especially when he was in there with the starters. Torrey Craig looked a little better, hitting his shots, rebounding. The Suns were out-rebounded only by 2. That was one of the uglier parts of their loss to Philadelphia on Monday, was they got out-rebounded by 11. And I was really hoping that this Minnesota game wouldn't go that direction also, especially with Gobert and Towns both obviously in this starting lineup, and it didn't. So I think that's a testament to Landale, Bridges, Ayton, even Cam Payne chipping in on the glass. All of it accumulates into a team win. And it's what was needed. It's what will be needed. Cam Johnson missed this game, of course. Good news on his injury. But nevertheless, even the 8 weeks or so without him are going to be tough. Until there's a Jay Crowder trade, Cam was already kind of doing a lot. Like, he was handling defensive matchups. He was being asked to score, being asked to space the floor, move without the ball, etc. And so now they're down without him as well. It's just going to be a heavy lift. Chris Paul missed this game. I don't want to be the person to say that I told you so, but in this case, I absolutely did. I was skeptical for the past 2 days. If you listened, about this Chris Paul injury and it being no big deal. That's what he said post-game on Monday, but I did not buy it. And sure enough, right heel soreness. He misses the second half on Monday, and then he did not play tonight. So I'm not saying it's severe, or I'm not saying it's some, death blow to his season. I don't mean that, but he doesn't leave games that are winnable. And he did that on Monday, which meant to me that he was dealing with something pretty severe. So not severe. I guess I used that word wrongly again. Legitimate, we'll say, right? And so these are the games, these are the types of wins that are going to be necessary. I'm going to hit Cam Payne more in the next segment, so I don't want to focus too much on him, but a couple things on Bridges, on Booker, on the team performance overall. I have to tip my hat to Mikal Bridges. I think you could say this was the best game he's ever played. You could. Maybe there's been some bigger games. I'll give you that. He has 27 in a finals game. Okay. Defended Chris Middleton in that game as well. His career high was 34. You could probably put that one in there. He just had a game against New Orleans a week and a half ago, where he was pretty excellent as well. 10 of 13 from the field. I believe he had 4 assists in that game. Scored a bunch of points. He has lots to choose from. But the point is, this is up there. He was aggressive from the jump, taking pull-up threes, he did an up and under layup against Rudy Gobert, driving past Gobert to the basket. He just looked like a guy who was frustrated with himself after Monday's game, only taking 12 shots in that game. I think at least 3 of them came in the fourth quarter once the game was out of reach, basically. So he looked like a guy who knew he needed to do more, and he did. And there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, that is exactly what you want out of your best players. You can have bad nights, but you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and improve on them. And so Bridges did that. I have to, come hat in hand, I guess you could say, here, because I criticized Bridges heavily the past 2 games. I said you need to bring it every night. It's not defense or offense. It's not threes or driving to the basket. It's all of it, all the time. You are one of the best players on this team. You make a lot of money. You have been committed to by this franchise. You are a leader in this locker room. You need to do all of it all the time. Bridges is more than allowed to have off nights. It's not the end of the world to lose one game to the 76ers, but it was how he played in that game. And so this game was a huge step forward. Devin Booker is hitting, it's been the case, right? He got MVP votes last year. He's an excellent player. He has added the threat of the pull-up 3. He is efficient as heck anyway, even with taking those more difficult shots. He's efficient regardless. He is now, handling the ball more with or without Chris Paul healthy. He's being more of a playmaker. 10 assists, just 1 turnover. It's easy to overlook this stuff, but the Suns do not win this game. They do not win several games this year without Booker. His assist-to-turnover ratio now on the season is 2-1. 61-31 on the year. That is very, very good stuff. It's back in line with last year, which was strong for him in that category, but hasn't always been the case. He's been a high turnover player in the past. He is starting to look like that might be a little lower this season than normal, but last year just 9.3% of his possessions ending in turnovers is craziness. But you look at the increase in assists, usage staying steady, and nights like this with low turnovers, it's starting to string together. The efficiency, the playmaking, the aggressiveness, getting downhill. We've talked about the driving to the basket element. If you had to pick a nit, you would say, similar to what I'm saying about Mikal, right? Doing all of it all the time. Booker is establishing this pattern where it's sort of either the threes or the free throws. He had a great night from behind the arc, 5 of 7 from deep, but then you don't get the free throws because he's not as committed to driving. Now, when he is such a good playmaker, when he is such a selfless player, you don't want, if it means him taking 30 shots just to be more aggressive, quote unquote, and have all of us pat him on the back a little more, no, that's not what you want. But that's just a nitpick. He was amazing. 38 minutes. I wasn't sure if Monty would bring him back in the fourth quarter, but then you remember Monty defers to his players with stuff like that, and Book is a madman. So, of course, he was going to come back out there. The Suns keep it in check in the fourth quarter as Minnesota makes a little push. Book comes back in around the 6-7 minute mark, closes things out, a couple jumpers, and that's the game. Team win. Booker leads the way, but he needs help. I told you, just playing Booker more minutes, just asking Booker to do more. I said on Monday night, that's not enough. Tonight, everybody else stepped up, and it was enough. I want to get into Cam Payne. I did not give him enough due here in segment number 1, but I want to take a minute with him because he's going to be the starter for a little while, it feels like. Maybe just 1-2 more games, but he's looked very, very good this year, and he's worth a celebration tonight. So let's do that. First, today's show, guys, brought to you once again by LinkedIn. It's super important to nail every single hire. These days, every potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. We are constantly hiring hosts on the network, editors on the network, social media people, and I know for a fact LinkedIn has been a godsend for us here on the Locked On Network, finding the right people, finding people who get local teams, local passion, and getting them in position. It's super easy to create a job post on LinkedIn Jobs. To make that happen, then you just add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word. And then you use simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience to quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and eventually hire. It's super important not only to get the hires right, but to start the year strong. Finish this year strong. Head into next year strong. And the right team member can help you do that. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Cam Payne scored 23 points on just about 50% shooting from the field, 8 of 17, 8 assists, and just that sounds like there's anything. Zero turnovers. I'm not going to say this is the best game he's ever played. I said that about Bridges. That feels extreme to just say that 2 Suns players had their best games ever in one night. I guess that would probably be a little bit of an exaggeration. However, I think Cam Payne's best game ever is the Knicks game last season, the night that Cam Johnson hit the game winner, and the night that Cam Johnson had his quad beaten to crap by Julius Randle. But if you remember, that's a game where Cam Payne had 15 plus assists, just looked incredible. He didn't do it as much as a passer tonight, but I still loved his patience. And that's been the thing all year long. I talked about assist to turnover ratio for Booker. He's at 2-1 now. Cam Payne is sitting here now at 2-1 as well. 33 assists, just 15 turnovers this year. And that's excellent to see. Last year, he was at about 2-1, almost 3-1. So he's settling into form there. But the biggest thing, I think, in terms of all of this is taking what's given to him, but also being aggressive. Like, that might sound kind of like a, paradox or whatever you want to say, but it's real. He went at Rudy Gobert at least twice. He missed one. He made the other that I could count. I think there may have been a third, but all of them were reasonable attempts. All of them were not biting off more than he could chew, and I think that's kind of the big problem that he had last year. It just sort of felt like there would be time, like, he was in his own head, I think is the best way to put it, right? Like, there were times last season where you would see Payne overthink it, take a bad shot because he didn't want to go all the way to the basket. He didn't have a plan, but he also didn't always trust his mid-range jumper. So he would just kind of get caught in no man's land, end up making bad decisions, turn the ball over, take a bad shot, whatever it might have been. And he's not doing that much this year. He talked during training camp that he spent all summer watching film, repping it in his head, and you can kind of tell, in my opinion. He's taking more shots from mid-range this year, more shots from three, fewer shots overall at the rim, which I think is fine, you know? Like the first season that he was Chris Paul's backup, he took 26% of his shots at the rim. He made 58% of them. Last year, he took a similar percentage of his shots there. He got to the rim about the same amount, but he only made 52%. And this year, the efficiency there is at 45%. He's only making less than half of his shots. So if that's not working, you got to come up with something else, right? And so upping the mid-range frequency, upping the three-point frequency, and he's making those shots. He's at a career-best percentage from mid-range, and he's at 37% from deep, which is an uptick from last year. So things are going well. He's efficient as a playmaker, efficient as a scorer. He's not wasting possessions. That was just the problem too often last year. And you see it in the confidence. You see that he feels like he's at the peak of his powers, and that's amazing to see. So he's playing better. I mean, that's the bottom line. But the other part of this that I think is important, watching him today, aside from just playing better, aside from, stepping up from last year, aside from stepping up without Chris Paul, all these things are important. But overall, I was thinking a lot about force tonight, okay? Because we all remember the clip that went viral during the 2021 playoffs where Monty is in DA's face talking about playing with force. It's one of the, typical Montyisms where he has these kind of go-to phrases. But in this case, I think it's real, and I think Payne is a big part of that. Like, if you just think off the top of your head, who are the Suns players who live up to that, who play with force on a night-to-night basis? Every night, right? I think you would have to say Devin Booker, right? I mean, he has a finesse game in his own way, but he plays hard. There was a moment tonight where he got teed up, and it came out from a Timberwolves reporter that what he had said, his trash talk was yelling at the Minnesota team that we play team basketball, we move the ball, which is just a hilarious thing to flex on another team for. Like, we play disciplined, old-fashioned 1950s James Naismith basketball, and you don't. It's just kind of hilarious. But as much as he can do that stuff, he also does bring it, right? He's driving more this year. He's strong. He's physical. He gets into it with guys. Like, that's what I think of when I think of force. You're making the other team feel you on both ends, right? And Booker obviously does that. But where do we go after that? I mean, Torrey Craig, you would say. I think some nights he can be that in terms of some energy. I don't think that Chris Paul, you wouldn't describe him that way necessarily. Maybe when he's really feeling it, getting into his scoring rhythm and also playmaking and all that, you do. The swing throughs, the choppiness on defense, that type of stuff. He can, but it's not every night, at least at this point in his career. I would say Jock Landale probably makes that list. Damian Lee, not really. Landry Shamet, not so much. Biyombo, sure, he doesn't play a ton. Josh Okogie, I suppose, but he doesn't play a ton either. Dario Saric, no. Deandre Ayton, not so much, right? I mean, that's the big knock. If there's anything that's not consistent from Ayton, it's that. I'm going to bring it to my opponent, my matchup, every single night. He does not do that. He was 4 of 10 from the field today. And I don't think Bridges always does that. Tonight, yeah, absolutely. Check that box for sure. But I wouldn't describe Bridges as somebody who plays with force on offense. On defense, absolutely. On offense, it doesn't always appear. And so you start to go down the line and you really realize how vital it is that Cameron Payne does that. I retain this. I maintain this, that during the 2021 run in the playoffs, when he was at the peak of his powers, he was excellent against the Lakers, he was excellent against the Clippers. Nobody on this roster got footprint center rocking more than Cameron Payne. And that's a direct byproduct of how hard he plays, the force that he brings, right? Jay Crowder brought that. He's gone. Cameron Johnson doesn't bring that. So, I mean, it's like a lot of nights it's Booker and then who else, right? It's like Booker and who else is going to be that player to step up and just take it to the opposition. And Payne does that. And so it doesn't really matter if he continues to start. He's going to play a huge role on this team. We know that. And the patience, the better decision making, the efficiency with everything he's doing, and that intensity and force are just irreplaceable. And so, yes, the Suns need more in terms of creation off the bench, but I don't think they should trade Cam Payne. I think they should ride this out. He's playing better. He deserves this shot, and I think Monty trusts him to see that out. Let's close out with a couple of our usual recap show segments, the Bench Mob Vibe Check, as well as the Pigeon of the Game. I want to get into that a little bit. First, one more quick break to tell you guys about the other sponsor of today's show, which is My Solar Nerd. If you live in Arizona, you know that people love to come to your door, knock, and tell you that they have the next best thing, the next great thing, free solar, quote unquote. Heavy air quotes there. Because you know, if you live in Arizona as well, that it's misleading. It's overcharging. It's not real. It's not legit. But My Solar Nerd is legit, and their mission is simple: help you get the best solar system to fit your needs. The guys at MySolarNerd.com are local, and so they know what it takes to go solar in Arizona. And they believe, they understand, that an educated customer is a happy customer, and their no-pressure approach will make sure all your questions get answered along the way. And once you're ready, they'll put their industry knowledge to work for you by choosing the best equipment, warranties, and installers out there. They'll also help you figure out all the credits and incentives that you may qualify for and manage the project from start to finish to keep you updated along the way. Our listeners will get a $50 Amazon gift card when you book a no-commitment evaluation. This promo only for Locked On listeners and only for homeowners. No apartments included here with solar panels, unfortunately, but visit MySolarNerd.com and select Locked On in the How'd You Hear About Us section to get included, to get nominated for this $50 Amazon gift card. Make the switch to solar on your terms. Start your research process today by visiting MySolarNerd.com and show Locked On some love by letting them know we sent you. Folks, going solar does not need to be complicated, and MySolarNerd.com makes it simple. Closing things out with two of our usual recap segments here on Locked On Suns. I want to start with the Bench Mob Vibe Check and give some love to Landry Shamet. 16 points, the best game of the season for him. Whatever was from Monty's mouth to these players' ears clearly worked in the aggressiveness department. I just got done talking about the force that Cam Payne has played with this year, and especially in this win over Minnesota. Mikal Bridges was an obvious benefactor of that message from Monty and the coaching staff today. And Devin Booker, obviously, is always aggressive, always looked to as a scorer. But Shamet, the potion that was drunk, I don't know. But Shamet was full of it as well. Again, 16 points, 5 of 7 from the field, 2 of 3 from deep. He had a nice pull-up 3 at one point coming off a screen. It felt like he was a little more decisive. He was got a couple easy ones in transition. This is all that he needs to do. That's always what's been so frustrating watching Cam Payne, right? Landry Shamet, right? It's like the baseline is pretty low, and I'm not saying that to be disrespectful to him and highlight how he can't even reach this low baseline. It's actually that we know he's capable of reaching it, right? For whatever reason, one of the best moments this dude has had in a Suns uniform came in basically a must-win playoff game in Game 5 against the Dallas Mavericks last season. And for whatever reason, that's not there every night. It pops up in a big moment in the postseason, and then, he starts this year and it's quiet again, right? So we've seen him do it. All he has to do is take and make the shots that are being created for him. He does not have to run point guard. He does not have to, even be relied upon that much for his on-ball defense or any of that. We know he's undersized. His job is to go out there and hit shots and be confident enough to take them. And so it doesn't feel all that spectacular to say, yeah, he scored 16 and he just kind of, made everything that was open, but that's what happened. And look, the benefit is obvious. +8 in the box score. This was not a fantastic night for the bench overall, but Shamet was a huge positive. When they played him over Damian Lee, him over Torrey Craig, the Suns really reaped the benefits of that. And so it's simple, but that's all he needs to do. It doesn't even need to be 16 points every night. If Landry Shamet could average 10 a night off the bench, the Suns would be in a great spot. The other quick thing I want to hit in terms of these show-ending segments is the pigeon of the game. And it's not so much that the Suns tonight had a guy that they were targeting. The last time that these teams played, it was when I created this segment to talk about how the Suns went after Karl-Anthony Towns, made him defend the pick and roll, made him defend off-ball screens with Cam Johnson running around. They obviously did not have that opportunity today because Cam didn't play. So it wasn't so much that any one player was just being exposed. I don't think the Suns had much respect for this Wolves defense in general, and rightly so. They put up 129 on them tonight. But I think if you're looking at the differences between the last game and this game, and the last game was closer, it was also on the Suns' home floor, and so it makes it even more impressive that Minnesota was able to keep it close. They've been a mess all year. They're 5-7. They do not look like they have a clue what their identity is. But Anthony Edwards played pretty incredible defense on Booker. That was a big story from that game. That was probably Book's worst game of the season. And it was a big part of why the Wolves, I think it was only a single-digit loss for them, and they kept it close throughout. A big reason was Edwards. And so you look tonight, Edwards offensively was not much of a factor, and defensively, Booker had 30 and 10, so he did not impact Booker's rhythm all that much. And so I just want to point that out. The Suns did not get afraid to go at Edwards. Edwards is not some sort of magic elixir to shut down Devin Booker. The Suns were more than happy to have Edwards switched onto post players, to have Edwards as the point of attack guy in a pick and roll. They did not adjust. It did not feel like, to me at least, anything to account for Edwards. So I just want to highlight that because I made a big deal out of how well Ant defended Book in that last game, and that's still true, but Booker's a better player. Ant may be a good defender, maybe a promising young athletic defender. Book is a sage veteran here in year 8, an MVP candidate, and somebody who is not going to be figured out by any one player. So it's not so much that Edwards was the pigeon of the game, but it was at least that he was not a chess piece that the Suns were afraid to encounter in the middle of the board, so to speak. That'll do it for today's show, guys. A big win, a bounce-back win. Very, very good to see. One more show to close out the week tomorrow before I head out of town. I'm going to be at Madison Square Garden on Friday night, so that'll be fun. Maybe I'll throw in some observations on next week's pod. But that'll do it for today. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen. Now, go make Locked On Sports Today your second listen to get caught up on everything across the sports landscape in 20 minutes or less. And I will talk to you all tomorrow.